Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 18 of The Dive. I'm Jat, joined by Kobe and Azael. Today we'll be talking about the Echo Fox vs. Clutch remake, Madlife retiring, which was really sad for me to hear, SKT Benched,
Spoilers.
their
Wow.
entire roster, as well as patch and NA LCS discussion. How you guys doing?
Doing pretty good. Feeling much better today.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Excited to get back into League of Legends and happy to talk about it.
Yeah, so for those of you who may have missed it, there was a pretty big and pretty controversial ruling in the Echo Fox versus Clutch Gaming game. I used to call it match, but now we just play a game, so it's one and the same. Anyway, they had about an 11,000 gold lead. There was a Talia bug that happened that wasn't chrono breakable, so then they had to make the call of whether or not to replay the game or declare a victory. And we say that, and even that can be a bit of a surprise because we've actually never declared a victory. So, Kobe, I know you want. I'll start you off.
Well, I mean, yeah, we just have to first lay the baseline here, right? Because this is a first time call, right? We've never called a game before. But the reason why that rule was put in place in the first place is that if you remake every single game, no matter what, that has a bug, then, is that really fair to the team that is, so far ahead, they're about to win the game, or, what kind of percentage chance to win, for one of the teams do you have to get to before you're like, okay, that's enough. We're not going to reset this back to zero and, reset champ select and all those things, right? So at least that's like the baseline where this came from. Now we can dive more into the wording on the rule and kind of the implications that come out of it and how you go about something as tricky as, deciding a game like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it is going to be, it's a hard decision no matter what, right? Like, it's one of those situations that as soon as the game couldn't be reset to where it was from, both decisions suck. It's just that, like, if you're Clutch and the game gets called against you, that sucks, and you should be pissed, right? And if you're Echo Fox and the game gets restarted, that sucks, and you should be pissed as well. Like, I've had these situations happen to me in tournaments, and one of the things that a lot of people, I saw talking about online was, well, if Echo Fox is the better team and you remake the game, well, shouldn't they just win again anyway? But I think, that's disregarding a lot of things. Like, I've had, not the exact same situation, it's a different game, but essentially where I'm about to win a game, the other player DCs in WoW,
yeah.
and they force a remake, right? And it's like, no cooldowns left, you're about to kill them, whatever, right? And that's totally disregarding, like, the mental effect that it has on you. Like, I had this happen to me at a tournament where a player DC'd at like 5% health right before we kill him, and they forced a remake. And like, first of all, we argued it for a long time, and then by the time that it was forced into a remake, I was so unbelievably tilted that it was like it's not like replaying the same game. And that's even disregarding the fact that Echo Fox wouldn't have been able to use Talia jungle, like, because that was what kind of caused the issue. So they wouldn't have been able to even have the same draft. You're giving away the surprise factor of Huni on Talia jungle, of the Rengar top for Dardoch, and all these different things. So, like, it would never have been a true reset of the game. And, both sides are going to be frustrating.
Well, listen, like, when I was on the analyst desk getting, like, a few updates of what was happening, I was very surprised when we said, Echo Fox wins, move on.
Yeah.
Because we'd never done it before. And I'd also read the rules about, like, awarding game victory. League officials, in their sole discretion, may determine that a team cannot avoid defeat to a degree of reasonable certainty. And then they have, like, a bunch of guidelines where they are meant to give a lot of wiggle room and, according to League Ops, don't necessarily need to be set. But I think the fact that that language is so strong, when we have this discussion on the analyst desk of, hey, could Clutch Gaming win from this situation? If I'm trying to put a number on it, on the desk I actually did, I said, I think this is a 90-10 game for Echo Fox over Clutch, meaning Clutch has a 10% chance of winning. But based on that language, you think there's a chance they're going to remake because bugs are always bad for everyone, and it has to do that. And I do want to very quickly also say how rare this situation is because we do have Chrono Break now. So the way Chrono Break works is it essentially just takes the file from the old game, replays it up to any point that you want, and then restarts again. This bug had a few different issues. It was a server crash, so it's hard to recover the file in the first place. That took a large amount of time. This is why the pause was so long. And then when they did recover it, the game crashed again anyways because of the nature of the bug.
Yeah.
So it's relatively rare that you can't chrono break, but when you're now in these situations again, your only two options are either full remake or say that a team won, which, by the way, based on the rules, had never been done before, which is why I was very surprised that they did it.
Yeah. So one of the things to me, what you would want to do, like you said, you felt like you could put a number on it, right? So what you would want to do to be most fair when you're writing a rule like this would be to come up with some breakpoint where you're like past, 90% or whatever. That's when it's remade and everyone can kind of agree on the rules. However, the difficulty in coming up with that rule set lies in the fact that our game changes so much. So even if I want to go back, I want to make a 95% confidence interval based on game state and all these towers and kills and all these different metrics that we can collect over a large sample of data, which would be maybe like season of League of Legends or something like that. Even if I go back and I make that interval, the meta is completely different now, right?
Yeah.
And
towers
we can both
now
completely disagree on what that means.
7 towers now means something completely different, literally on like a different patch, because the towers actually do different things, or Baron actually does different things. So that is a huge wrinkle in actually coming up with hard metrics and lines and numbers for when you're definitely going to reset. And then the problem becomes, are you, as Zealous is saying, going to take away the hard work that the winning team did to get the game to this state? And maybe there's, added things like champ select, or there's a one-time role swap that's been revealed. Or are you going to take away the hard work that the losing team did to keep themselves, with X chance of coming back in this game?
And there are multiple layers of subjectivity to this, because I agree with you that I think it's relatively impossible to put in plain text and have it be fair of, oh yeah, 7 turrets means this on this meta, or 2 inhibitors means this on this meta, or team composition related, right? Like Azir Sivir with 2 inhibitors down sometimes doesn't matter because they can wave clear infinitely. But there's still a person, the League Ops head official on the day, that needs to be able to make the call of whether or not a comeback is reasonable. And in their subjective opinion, where is the threshold for what is reasonable? Because in my head, like intuitively, if you have to have a remake, it's this team has like a high enough chance to win. So in this situation where I say Echo Fox wins 9 out of 10 times, in my opinion, right? And if that's the opinion of the League Ops official, like that's going to be the break point that they're going to decide. Is it now more fair to award them victory or to make them re-enter essentially a 50-50 state? And then if you're able to make that call, like what is the threshold in which you should actually say this game's a rain out like they would in baseball and it's over?
Yeah, I mean, I think the threshold becomes very, again, it's all subjective.
It's so subjective,
and
but
then
like if you're making the decision,
if I'm making the decision, I think that like there should be a remake, even in, I would say, like an 80-20. Like I think if you're winning,
so that's you're going to win 4 out of 5.
Yeah, if you're winning 4 out of 5, and like there would also, like, I feel, have to be like other things as far as the progression of the game, like general guidelines and so on and so forth. But if the game cannot be remade, and remember, this is like an extreme circumstance, we're not expecting this to have happened very many times ever. Then I still think if you're supposed to win 4 to 5 times, 80% of the time, it's more unfair to put you back in a 50-50 than it is to remove the chance from the other team. And don't get me wrong, if I was on clutch, even if I had a 5% chance to win, I would be pissed about a remake because you're having that chance taken away from you, and you could come back. And there's been, like, when you think of some of the craziest comebacks, and if I were to put a number on some of these games, you'd be like 95-5, like 99-1.
And those games have
like,
absolutely happened.
And those games,
COG at MSI,
SKT at Worlds coming back, against some of the LPL teams. The Faker Shockwave getting 5 people, they're down like 14K. Like, those are supposed to be unwinnable games, and we know they can happen. But I think at the end of the day, you have to look at what is more fair. And an 80-20 game is closer to like being 100% chance to win than it is to being 50% chance to win, for lack of a better term. Okay. And that's why I believe it should still be going that way.
Yeah, it's so difficult there because it does feel like the bigger step is to say, boom, this team wins or something, you know.
It is. I agree.
You always want a team to kill the Nexus.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You want it to happen.
Especially since this was the first time. Everyone's like,
yeah,
kind of shocked.
I like if I'm putting myself in League Ops shoes, right, I wouldn't have wanted to make this call. I would have wanted to go back in time a few months and like, in the event of this, like, and change the language in the rules to be a little bit less hard of like, you know, a team could not avoid defeat to a level of reasonable certainty. I would have been like, I would have tried to make some language that is kind of more nuanced, like our discussion here, where, you know, a reasonably high chance of winning versus the other team who has a reasonably low chance of winning.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's terrible. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how to write this stuff.
If the chances is pretty good.
But that's kind of how I feel, and I would be super, super angry if I was Clutch or if I was a Clutch fan, because it's not fair, but it's also not fair to make Echo Fox play it again because bugs that are not chrono breakable absolutely suck. It's like the worst situation in our game when it happens.
And at the end of the day, hopefully it just never happens again because there's no good outcome. There's no perfect outcome from it.
Well, at the end of today, we actually have a micro patch, so that at least we have some good news that they went and they were able to find the source of the bug. They fixed the bug. And now in North America, it's actually shipped out. I know the other regions, as we speak, are getting the patch.
Yep. So it should be rolled
that'll
out
be
globally pretty soon.
Yeah,
so
that's
at least
different
this
times
specific
depending on
one
which-
shouldn't repeat. But
Yep.
you know, hopefully never gonna have it again. But either way, crappy situation. I still think that the best decision was made with the information given.
Yeah.
But we're gonna be moving on.
I would have liked the rules to be different, or there to be like personally from a broadcast perspective, I also wish we would have found a way to be like discuss a little bit more, because we ended of like, oh, could they come back? What's going to happen? And then it was like, Dash, this is the ruling. See you in 3.5. And then we came back. It was like Cloud9.
I don't know if I was ready to issue the first, game calling.
Yeah, but ultimately they had to make the decision in like 30 minutes. And yeah. Anyway, next topic.
Madlife has retired. The end of an era. Obviously, Madlife iconic, has kind of names like all these moves named after him. People talk about predicting flashes with hooks and all these sorts of things. The Madlife. You guys are obviously around and kind of casting a lot more during its glory days.
That discussion, when we were talking in the makeup room or whatever, made me feel like more old. When Azale was bringing it up, I was like, okay, yeah, we'll bring up Madlife, I guess. And I was like, yes, of
course you talk about
him
Madlife.
or whatever. Like that was, some of the earliest memories of making support as a role not seem like just complete trash. This was way before Riot decided to rework support items, and supports are actually super buff now, and people are starting to complain that they're too strong. But Madlife was the player back in the day who was able to make this role that was like the Dota supports, where you're scraping together money. You have to buy wards after wards after
Oracles
wards.
and wards.
Green wards existed. Yeah, oracles. Potions and stuff existed, and he is able to make up the difference in the plays that he's able to create. The things you're mentioning, Azale, with the Blitzcrank hooks, the Thresh hooks, predictions. He was a very avant-garde player, and you don't often have the type of player that has that skill and has that timing to actually get moves named after them anymore. We kind of have discussed that previously as well.
Yeah, and I talk to a lot of our fans after shows, and I always ask them, like, how long have you been watching for? And I get a lot of answers like, oh, I've been watching since 2013, I've been watching since 2014, I've been watching the last 2 years. But Madlife was really at his peak at like the end of 2011 and the beginning of 2012. So I think for a lot of League viewers, this is, like you said,
we're super old.
What ages us? It's like a basketball fan in like NBA terms versus League terms. This is your Dr. J or your Wilt or your Bill Russell like comparisons. It's so far in the past that a lot of people didn't see him live. I may have power crept that a little bit. Maybe it's more like Jordan LeBron.
I was
But seriously, I feel like there's a relatively small percentage of our current viewers that actually watch and experience Madlife in his peak. And as Kobe said, like, this guy revolutionized the game, and at one point, I think, was the biggest star because he had more game impact than anyone else on the map in what was objectively the worst role in the game, which is what was so incredible about Madlife, and I think gave fuel to people even saying support took skill, because Madlife was so clearly better than other people. Specifically, the OGN championship he played against Froggen and Crepo when they were down 0-2. Madlife hard carried a lot of those games with his Alistair play to get them back in it. And it made me really sad to see that he was retiring, because I remember, I think it was at the 2014 All-Star game, I got to have dinner with some of the Korean pros like Madlife. And that was always when I was still pretty early on in esports. And I was asking him, how long do you want to play? Because a lot of people say that esports careers don't last that long. They're 3 or 4 years. And Madlife said that he wanted to play until he was 30. So I thought he was going to. And he's 25 and announced his retirement, which is like just really sad for me. But he hasn't necessarily been able to achieve what he wants to. He had that stint on Goldcoin United over in NA, hasn't found a home in Korean teams. So, he said, another interview that I haven't read yet, like, this isn't the end. So I really want to see what his next step is, because he is so important in the history of League of Legends.
And I think, while I wasn't like watching him live in 2011, 2012, that sort of thing, like, it is one of those rare players that, like, coming into the game at a much later date, most people still know about Madlife. Like, people still, like, you'd see a hook in a game, like someone hooks a flash or flays someone out of a rock jump or something, and people are in all chat, Madlife, like these sorts of things. Like, that's one of the players that has that lasting legacy. And you could tell, like, even though he wasn't at the top for a long time, he would still get voted into all-star appearances for the LCK. And, like, he's such a beloved player. And really, I think, is going to have a lasting impression on the game.
Definitely agree. Is it time now to also start talking about Faker getting benched?
Yes.
Because that's another all-time great, and pretty early to call it, but he's done.
Kobe, when I think about Purian, I always knew one day he was going to supplant Faker. When I saw him playing in North America, I mean, along with Core JJ, like, those are the two clearly going to go back to Korea and dominate. And Fly as well. Fly, I knew one.
Yeah, Core JJ, I knew he was going to be a world champion when he was playing on Dignitas.
You could see it. Him and Kiwi Kid.
Yeah.
The sparks were there.
The reason we're talking about this is last night, SKT was up against MVP, and it wasn't like they just benched Faker in isolation for Purian. The whole roster changed. They played 5 sub players, and we don't actually really know why, so we're purely speculating. What do you think?
Well, I mean, we don't really know why, but the only one that I care about at all is the Faker benching. How SKT have been doing, you could tell me, Bang, Wolf, any of these other guys are getting benched on the team. I'm like, go for it. Try something out. Go wild, Coma. But as soon as you cross the line, like, you bench Faker, and it's for Purian, right? Us in North America, like, maybe we have a biased or a skewed opinion or something because he was here and he didn't have tremendous success or anything, but it's not like they benched him for, rookie or something like that, right?
Yeah.
That's why it was so shocking, and that's why everyone's trying to, be a detective. Is this like the new and improved Cloud9 situation? Is there, some attitude problems going on? Is the Coma belt's not working anymore?
Faker tweets out with
Faker didn't
Wolf,
feel
like,
that
on
good.
the bench with the bros.
That would be the least Faker thing to ever happen. And like, at least my take is definitely not. So when they talked about the Cloud9 thing, there was a lot of talk about, they lost their fire to improve and all this. Faker was rank 1 in Korean solo queue, right? Like, he's okay. Well, he did hit rank 1. Maybe he fell.
He's been rank 1 many times.
And I mean, just very recently, right? Like, so he's still grinding. He's still, like, able to reach the very top. It's hard for me to read that much into it. Like, maybe he just wanted a break, right? SKT is struggling. Very clearly, they're going to be trying some things because the team looks like trash. They look really bad. They did not even win. Not only did they lose both their series with Faker, they lost all the games in those series. They haven't even picked up a game win, let alone a series win. So SKT is looking like hot garbage. They're trying to do some different things. Maybe Faker wanted to take a break. Maybe the coach is trying to do some crazy stuff. But all I know is we're one step closer to Faker and NA, baby. Steve, get out your paycheck.
That's true.
SKT's in so much trouble.
They're donezo, man.
They always have the chance of turning it around, and we constantly had this discussion last year of, will SKT miss Worlds? And then even last split, we finally said that KT would beat them in a series, and then they finally did. We said it a lot of times, but they finally did. And now they're yet to win a best of 3. They're 0-3. They just lost to MVP. They play Griffin next, who's a 4-0 team. Yeah, they play best of 3, and yeah, their season's long, man, but they already don't have that many championship points, and they have to find something this split. When you're subbing out your entire roster against MVP, which is a team that you need to pick up wins against. MVP was 6-12 last split. They're not a team you should be losing to. And yeah, it was a close series, but I hope it was just some R&R, like a de-stressor or something for this team, because if we start seeing much more of that, then I've lost hope for SKT.
I mean, I have no hope for them making Worlds unless they make a significant roster change. I just think it's a situation where it's like a lot of people are always going to be shocked by SKT's like struggles because of the legacy that this team has, but it's not the same team, right? Like when they dropped Tooney, I strongly believe that they thought they were going to get Marin, they thought they were going to get Impact, they thought they were going to get some, big name replacement for him. None of those panned out by all rumors and everything. Like Marin obviously didn't want to go there. I heard there was offers to Impact and to Smeb and to all these different guys, and no one went. So they lost like their top laner, who was, in my opinion, their better top laner. Their bottom lane is now like, whether you want to say other bottom lanes got better, they got worse, combination. They're like middle of the road bottom lane, right? Like it's not like Bang and Wolf are smashing these guys anymore. Like you have Prey and Gorilla, you have the Ruler bot lane, you have Deft and Mata, and even guys like Pilot and so on, like and Teddy, and all these guys are coming in and who have a lot of talent. So it's like middle of the road bottom lane. I think lower tier top lane. Jungle was already a struggle. Like that's mid low tier, probably in LCK as well. So you have one lane that's supposed to be near the top of the league, and now even that is somewhat arguable. Like there's lots of people that are saying BDD is better than Faker now, and so on and so forth. So it's like you look at the roster, it's not that good. How are they supposed to be getting to the top of LCK with this team? Like unless there's big changes, it seems like it makes sense.
Yeah, I tuned in to watch some of the VODs and even watch like the intro leading up to Champ Select and stuff like that to try and see if Papa Smithia and Atlas had any extra information, but even they were like really caught off guard, and they're like, well, we can see the starters are in the studio,
and the fans were expecting to see.
We know that they're not dead, but like we don't have that much insight. Whereas the Cloud9 roster that you're referencing, and actually since we didn't really get to talk about it last time, since it came out like during the recording of the dive, now they've been very explicit. Travis did another interview with Jack and his dad, and they were like, well, it was definitely the attitude problems for Jensen and Sneaky, and the way that they were kind of approaching scrims in the meta and stuff like that. And Zazel specifically for the Academy guys has had extremely good communication and is always thinking about the future. Like they actually laid out some very explicit things about what he has been doing and taking the next steps as far as guiding the team and being much more proactive. So that to me, that was like some very interesting information that we have that, Zazel looks like, other teams have already, tried to get him before off of, the Academy team, but he looks to be extremely strong, especially as far as like guiding the whole team. And then at the other two guys, Sneaky and Jensen, it was definitely sort of your spot is available, but like you need to earn it back. And we've seen already like Jensen climb to like 500 points challengers from like Diamond or something like that, trying to, play and get his spot back.
It was very transparent from Jack. And the few things that I also want to mention there is at one point in the interview with Travis, he said Reaper and Jack were talking and said, this current LCS team will not make playoffs. So do you want me to change things? And Jack said, of course, I want to make playoffs.
Yeah.
But like to actually say that in an interview when you have this team of previous all-pro players and you don't think they're going to make playoffs means something must have been going very wrong. Yeah. And then also, I was so confused with the SKT tweets immediately, or sorry, the Cloud9 tweets immediately after the benchings, where they were posting pictures of like on the bench with the boys or benched XD. And Jack said, that wasn't very professional, and I was not pleased. I'm like, oh, damn. That means something real is going down.
Well, that means
Jack and his players.
That means they're getting benched.
Those memes were.
It was so weird when they all kept doing it, and then even the picture of them all and stuff. Like I messaged Mindy. I was like, is this a troll? Are you guys actually benched? Like, what is going on?
When that happened, that it was just a big joke.
Yeah, it was all like,
Well,
some people
and that's the problem. They were treating it like
they're
a
the
joke.
meme team.
This coming week, we were all kind of assuming like it was going to be this 1 week of reprimand, but now they're going to be benched again. I think that's actually a high likelihood.
I would expect that I'm going to just C9 Academy. What should we call them? The Golden Glue Keith squad, like, is going to stay in for at least a week. At least 1 more week is my guess.
I think it's reasonable to give them another week, because based on their performance in the first week, so they went 1-1, but their one loss was actually a pretty competitive game where they gave up both the bottom lane died, gave up their summoners, then their jungler died level 2, and gave up his summoners, and their bottom lane was missing waves at the start because they died so late. So it was a pretty horrible start to the game, and they still made it a competitive game. And then game 2, they won. Even in game 1, Golden Glue looked really good in a loss, getting solo kill on Fevivin. So, they looked reasonable. It'll be interesting to see, if they are going to keep on to these guys for longer or not, because there is obviously going to be kind of the worry of, if your stars are motivated again and are practicing and working hard, do you frustrate them, or do you do like maybe long-term damage to your team's kind of like mentality and how that is working? If they say, hey, now I've put in the work, Jensen, okay, I climbed from D1 or whatever, I'm 600 LP challenger now. Does that then kind of hurt your team long-term? If you're thinking, well, we're going to eventually go back to Jensen as long as he's motivated, right? Yeah. Like Golden Glue had a great performance, but can you justify based on their history to keep him in over Jensen, who has been traditionally one of the best mid laners in North America for so long?
I don't think the team makes worlds unless they start Jensen and Sneaky. That's my opinion right now, and I'm willing to be wrong on this, but that's just based on their history. And if they can refine their motivation and grind again, I think that experience and their history of success will prove it.
Yeah, there was actually also a clip of Bjergsen talking about the issue, and that's kind of something that he said. It was like, honestly, right now, or last week, he said, we got better practice out of scrimming the team with Zazel,
the academy team,
Keith, and Golden Glue, actually the whole academy team, than they did versus the Cloud9 main roster. But he also said that he has to think if Jensen, is applying himself, then he'll get his spot back.
I also, just to kind of close this out, we still don't have every side of the story, so to speak, right? We've seen some passive-aggressive tweets. We've seen Jack
probably never will,
and Reaper talk about it. I don't think we ever will. But I also think it's just an incredibly difficult situation for Jack to be in when your stars that are a lot of the reasons people are fans of your franchise either aren't motivated or aren't listening, or even like how 100% true that is, because we're only hearing it right now from Jack's side. Like, what do? Do you listen to your coach and try and win with these highly motivated academy players? Or do you say, I'm going to take a big risk and try and motivate these guys, or take a big risk? And I think Golden Glue and Keith are actually good enough now to make worlds, knowing that it's going to be such an unpopular decision. He has to be really confident that it's the right one. Like overly confident. This can't be one of those, I'm mostly sure it's going to work. No, you have to be sure it's going to work because of the backlash you were sure to receive. And they got blasted for it.
Yeah, they really did. I mean, there's so many of the fans are fans of players more than teams, I feel like these days. And that's all your most popular players. But then on the other side, I feel like sponsors often care more about results. Like a lot of the sponsors care more about like,
are you winning
or not, right? Rather than sometimes individual players. So it's a tough thing to balance. But meta 8.12 coming out soon. Obviously there's going to be some pretty big changes. Some of the most notable ones I think is stuff with like the banner getting removed. There's a lot of talk about that, whether it was good change, bad change. But it'll be interesting to see how it affects pro play.
We only got 1 week on patch 8.11. There has been a ton of discussion about whether or not you should be playing marksmen, or if you should be playing the new stuff like Brand and Lux and Mordekaiser and Darius and Yasuo and this plethora of champions that people just seem to be throwing into the bottom lane and don't really know what they're doing with. My opinion on it is, at least watching NA, who was the, I think, most marksman-centric of the regions, is that a lot of the marksmen who weren't playing marksmen sucked at those picks. And that was a big part of it as far as the matchups. And when I watch the LCK games, it feels to me like they are more practiced on the non-marksman picks for the most part, which is, again, why we're seeing more of it. And I think the success kind of shows that. AD carries have a lower win rate in LCK. They have a higher win rate in NA. But as you mentioned as well, when you bring Banner into the mix, that's a bigger part of it than a lot of people realize, of not having a marksman, having that extra turret push once you've gotten your early to mid game lead, taking Baron to actually ending the game.
Yeah, I mean that's a discussion we even had with Hooney a little bit on NA LCS tonight, and like he said that they would have to try it, and Echo Fox obviously is kind of like a big proponent of swapping things around and trying some of the non-marksman bot lanes and so on and so forth. But he wasn't even sure like how easy it would be to end games without marksman if you were going to kind of lose Banner. I do think that there is the option of bringing more like siege type mages in the mid lane, right? If you want to play with like a Ziggs or whatever, and that's obviously the most extreme example, but there are mages that are very powerful, actually knocking down turrets as well. And on Freak's new show that came out, Freak Show, he even talks about like kind of the breakpoints, and it was like I think I want to say it was 250 or 350 AP or something like that, that an Ahri actually does, without cooldowns up, more DPS to a turret than a Tristana, who's considered, one of the best actually knocking down turrets. So that was pretty interesting to me, just even seeing those sort of breakpoints and how mages can effectively knock down turrets. But I also think, you have to take into consideration there are some small kind of like marksman buffs that are going to push people back towards it. The fact that a lot of people have been successful on marksman as well. I mean, you mentioned NA versus LCK, but LPL is very heavily marksman also. They have been running mostly marksman, and they have been pretty successful. So I think it should still be, if you are very good at running the new strategies, then they should be part of your playbook. But if you are not, marksman was always better. And that hasn't changed. I think just teams sometimes didn't really realize it.
Yeah, I mean, we go back to the same points that we were kind of mentioning last episode, and it does have to do with the skill expression that you have on that champion. Something to me that people aren't talking about at all for this patch, though, is the huge nerf to all of the shield champions and the shielding items.
Yeah,
this is a huge change, and everyone is completely tunneled on, are people going to play marksman? Are they going to play Vladimir, Brand, and stuff like this? And the Banner's gone. But all of the items that build out of Forbidden Idol got nerfed. Forbidden Idol itself got nerfed. The duration of almost all the shields here, Karma, Lulu, even Oriana's in there, Janna, got cut by around half, or even sometimes more than half.
Janna one's even more extreme because
Janna
her shield
is
decays.
decaying. Like, to me, that is a huge change, to shielding champions, and a huge nerf to get a lot of those types of supports out of the game, which is going to be really interesting. As well as in the micro patch, they added some buffs to the crit itemization. So one thing we also said last time around was like, okay, you can still definitely play Lucian, Kai'Sa, Ezreal, right? These are marksmen technically, and they're very powerful in the bottom lane, especially since the players all have tons of games on these champions. But the ones that rely more heavily on the scaling into crit builds really don't see that much use because the games are slower. You're not going to be able to get there. Now, they're buffing up Infinity Edge, Stormrazor, and Essence Reaver a little bit on the micro patch. So that's going to try and add a little bit more power or make it closer to achievable. Yeah. It doesn't feel to me like these are big enough to be like, boom, everybody back in there.
Agreed.
Go for Infinity Edge
they
or whatever.
Stated that they want it to be still, they want the bot lane diversity to stay the same. Like they want there to be melee stuff still.
Yeah. I mean, the goal has always, they're all like, we need diversity. Everybody should be playable at the equal opportunity chance, for all champions or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's, what they're trying to do. And we'll see if this kind of edges any more of them back in, because as you're saying, it's still so powerful to build around something like a late game crit AD carry.
Yep.
But this is combined with a bunch of nerfs to the supporting shield champions, which are usually like, all right, it's the Lulu and the Kog'Maw and the Tristana or whatever. That really gets the superpower.
The shielding and healing stuff is interesting to me because those champions have fallen so much out of the meta, at least in the pro play. Like there is still some of them. Lulu, I think, is the most popular that we're still seeing, because we're seeing Lulu as the bot lane carry, as the support, as the mid laner.
Reckless's sick Janna.
Yeah, that was nasty.
Karma on that team too. They got all these champions in there as well.
There you go.
There's a direct nerf to Fnatic. Oh.
I think it's a buff because it'll stop them from running one of the worst drafts I've ever seen.
They won.
That was terrible. Just terrible. But anyway, like when you're looking at the highest presence supports in the game, so it's I don't think this actually changed Rakan. I didn't see Rakan in there. I'm not sure.
Didn't change
but
Derek either.
you know, the highest kind of presence, you know, bottom laners there. Rakan, Alistar, Braum, Morgana, you know, Shen, except like Lulu does get changed. Fiddle, Tom, Taric, Pike. Like none of those guys are really affected. So I do think it's a huge change for solo queue, and especially because like a lot of the shielding and healing supports, because they're so consistent, like their baseline is so high, they've been highest win rate guys forever. So this does change up a lot there, and I think it does, you know, maybe knock down a peg like the kind of protect the Hogmile, protect the crit 80 carry type comps. But in pro play, I don't think we'll see that big of a change. And I know part of the idea with the shield nerf is that it's like, so it's shorter duration for most of them. Janna is the exception because it decays. Shorter duration, but same power. So the idea being, you don't just mindlessly press your Lulu shield every time it's up. You use it when they're actually taking damage, and then it's going to have the same value. And that is kind of the hope. So you would think for pro play that would have less of an effect than on your average, you know, like silver or bronze Lulu who might not be using it as well.
Yeah, and overall, I agree the shield changes will nerf the strats a little bit. I personally like the Stormrazor buff because I think that item is a little bit underpurchased. I think it's actually a good one-item spike for marksmen. But what's ultimately going to decide the meta is what teams are figuring out in scrims. We still see so much upheaval in what people are playing, and I don't think there's anything in this patch that drastically changes that, more so than just more time with the changes.
Yeah, more data is going to go a long way, because you watch one game where Cody Sun dies level 1 on Vladimir, and your immediate reaction like, he's garbage on Vladimir, they can't play it at all or whatever. But especially since the sample size is so low, like you see one big mistake, then you kind of write off a whole strategy or something like that. If they put more time into it, you know, maybe this does become, you know, one of their better strategies and stuff like that. So it really is going to be about, you know, how the individual teams are actually developing.
Yeah.
And how quickly they actually are able to pick these things up.
And I really hope, even though this hasn't really happened in League of Legends history, the teams come to completely different conclusions, and that's what they practice. I hope we have the team that has the bot laner who's really good at all the non-marksmen, and then we have the other team who's just hard stuck on marksmen doing their best to win. And we get to see those styles clash, because that's, to me, the most exciting.
And I think there's kind of a better chance, because you could very easily come to the conclusion that, well, we don't have Huni, so we can't. You know, like they're these sorts of players that, like, especially with the crazy role swap stuff, it's like you don't.
There's these sorts of players that are Huni, and then there's these sorts of players that everyone else is not Huni.
Well, like Wild Turtle and stuff. Yeah, but that's kind of the joke, right? It's like one of those things where you watch Echo Fox, and you're like, wow, that's working really well for Echo Fox. I don't think any teams were sitting there, hey, this is what we should do. This is what we got to practice, you know, like, all right, hear me out here, Dokla. You just learn Yasuo bot, Talia jungle, and all the carries top, and maybe practice up some Riven mid, and then we'll be ready to go for next week. Like, it's not a strategy you try to emulate, and that is so cool. So I really hope that Banner doesn't knock out these sort of strategies.
Well, let's move on to North American LCS as well, because we have 1 week in the books. Echo Fox, we're starting with them because they were the most interesting team. Not only did we get to talk about them at the start of the show, but they also had the only role swaps where Huni played jungle and AD carry, does bot lane carry, yet to play top lane. I wanted to give him a quest during the long fill to play all 5 roles. He says he's not going to play support. But
I don't know. I tweeted out, do you think Huni will play support just to get the 5 of 5? And he responded, and he was like, I play LeBlanc, smiley face. So,
yeah.
And everyone else was like, oh, of course, Pike, you know, is going to be the champion or whatever. But, you know, it could happen.
I want it to happen. He's gonna play mid. I think it's hard to say, but I hope they're the first team to pull out a super, like a gold funneling strategy, because that hasn't been hurt that much on 8-12. I think it's totally viable. Did you actually catch the super that happened in the LCK?
The Zone series?
So, yeah. So,
it was the best, last night, the best Kaisa super I've ever seen. 14-0-1. They won in 23 minutes.
Okay. I saw the King Zone Dragon X versus KT Rolster because I definitely want to see those two teams go at it again.
King Zone
it worked. But they didn't win because they were funneling farm into Master E.
No. Yep.
They won because Mundo was dumping on people 1v4. Like Khan just went insane with the Mundo up topside. And actually, I thought one of the more interesting things about the game was that KT actually illustrated the ways that you dismantle gold funneling strategies. A Tarek Yi does not have mid-game wave clear. And the strat relies upon them getting to the gold sources, the camps, as well as the minions, as quickly as possible and trying to get back before you're able to do something else. So the game is so much about tempo. And not only can you try to, invade them early or, try and cut off their jungle pathing, but in the mid game, you have to just hard smash that tower. There's no excuse for not pushing in super hard against a Tarek Master Yi, who's going to be unable to wave clear. So you should be getting, in exchange for all their funneling going to Master Yi, you should be getting more gold as a team. Should be getting a first turret bonus or whatever. And that's why the draft is so important if you see it coming. Because you have to worry about all these pushing lanes. What are your side lanes going to be able to do? And what is your mid-jungle duo? Are they going to set up to be able to punish that?
Yeah, and that does bring us back to Echo Fox. They are the team most likely to do these strategies. Do you think they can maintain success with this stuff? Because we were even thinking, how many top laners does Dardoch play? Like, probably just Rengar. How many top laners does Altec play? They just banned Mundo, right?
Right. Everybody practice one top laner.
Right, and then you can cycle to go up.
Swap.
Is that like the level of their strategic depth? Is that sustainable? Are they a team that can stay in first? I think these are the questions that I want to ask.
I think they are a team that can stay in first because they got third place playing completely standard. If you add a couple more plays to the playbook, even if it's just something that you say, oh, well, then you just ban Rengar and you just ban Mundo and you just ban, Phoenix plays Rise top one. Okay, so you just ban that. Well, then you're kind of compromising your draft in a lot of ways that they could get advantages elsewhere. And they can play standard. We know that they can play standard and win that way too. So I think it doesn't have to be the only thing you can do. It just has to be a thing you can do really well. As long as you're not then, awful at the other strategies, it's just an advantage. And, we've also seen one of the cool things about that King Zone KT game as well that I think can apply in all of those funneling strats is that, they didn't have to win just through the E dominating because they picked other strong winning lanes. And that's one of the things I really didn't like with when I talked earlier about Fnatic, how they did it. When you have a Janna, Karma bot lane and all these sorts of things, it's all your eggs in one basket completely. And if that person gets put behind it all, you just lose. Whereas, like you said, they had a Mundo who's doing really well against Aurelia. They picked a Lucian Lulu bot lane that was just beating the Vladimir Rakan very heavily. So it's they just were winning across the map. And then the Yi eventually is going to get enough farm and turn on. So I think this is kind of one of the new evolutions of it. And we could very easily, I think, see Echo Fox run this type of strategy with just Huni's just playing a normal top lane, bottom lane is just playing normal bot lane stuff. But then you just run in this.
The bottom lane part of that, if the bottom lane is, trying to play something, standard or trying to play a winning lane, is the Echo Fox bottom lane going to be able to push up? Are they going to have as much control as we saw in the King Zone game, right? Yeah. So this Echo Fox team, to me, while we're oh my God, it's the craziest team, they can do anything, they're so flexible. When it comes down to that half of the map, are they really that flexible? Because that was the weakness that we pointed out last split for them. And Altec, I think, had an amazing Mundo game, but how much confidence are you going to put in them to, if you're doing gold funneling or something else, them as by themselves as a 2v2 to actually, push up, smash that lane or whatever.
If they have an Illusion plus range support versus someone who's uncomfortable on Vladimir or something, I think they can. But
that's a lot of ifs.
But of course, but I mean, to me, it's me saying that I think Echo Fox could stay in first place is not saying Echo Fox is infallible. It's saying that all the teams have very clear weaknesses, and Echo Fox has the potential to kind of overcome theirs. TSM obviously still looks like they have questions in the jungle. They don't even know who they're going to be starting. 100 Thieves have an awful O2 week. None of the teams look perfect. TL had a great one game, and then Doublelift looked kind of very uncomfortable on Vladimir. They struggled there. So all the teams have issues. I just think Echo Fox is the team that showed the best mastery of some of these new strategies in week one. And if you can take a third place team and add some new kind of pages to the playbook, then I think you have the potential to maybe be first.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to TSM, who was the reverse of Echo Fox in the first week as far as what they did, because they played Kai'Sa Varus in the bottom lane. They played standard junglers, relatively standard mid laners. The craziest thing you may have seen out of them was the Aatrox top by Haunter in the first game, where he tweeted out he didn't know that his Q was unstoppable. That's why he got solo killed by an Ornn. But ultimately, right, they had that comeback against COG and then a really solid win the next. So you guys put them either second or third in your power rankings before the split.
Yeah.
I put them number 1. They also announced that they were starting Grig over Mike Young. Grig looked pretty good. And Haunter said in an interview that Mike Young was getting really stressed with shot calling, so he's going to be on the academy team for at least now. But when I watch Bjergsen's stream, he's doing with Grig. I feel like that's probably going to stick around at least until they start losing, if that happens.
Yeah, the messaging was interesting with that one, because when they announced it, they were like, yay, Grig got promoted up to the LCS team to share time with Mike Young. And we haven't seen Mike Young, and his tweets around his academy gameplay, like he wasn't even happy with his gameplay in the academy league. So it does feel like we're more of shifting over to Grig, and then maybe when Mike builds back up his confidence, maybe synergy with the team or something. Do you even see him coming back in at all this split if TSM continue to win, whether it's because of Grig or not?
I think there's no chance. I mean, they had their worst split ever.
Like if they're going 18-0,
exactly,
like you're never subbing out. But if they lose a few, I can see Mike coming back in.
I mean, they had their worst split ever with Mike Young, right? That's just like true. And it's one of those things where, like, I still haven't been seeing him play a lot with Bjergsen on their stream, so they're still playing. It's not like I think he's gone. But if Grig just comes in and doesn't lose, that's always the opportunity you have when you are a player coming up. If the starter is looking shaky and you can overperform, and whether it's all on you or not, if everything is working, people usually don't want to shake it up, unless the only chance is if they're winning every game but they're losing every single scrim and whatever. Mike Young's looking amazing there.
A little bit of an aside, but do you think all of these academy players trying to move up and successfully moving up to NA LCS teams is going to improve the peak North American solo queue experience? Because all the academy players are seeing all these changes and they're like, C9's moving up, TSM's moving up, everybody's getting promoted. How do you best prove your dedication to the team and stuff? And people are always going to gravitate towards being like rank 1 in solo queue or something like that, because that is impressive, and that it takes a lot of work, and that's something substantial to hold on to, even though it doesn't directly translate to you're so good or you
people always think it's
so
like
dedicated, but it does mean something, right? Yeah. It's a little bit nebulous,
especially public perception. Like Grig was top 5 almost the entire last split in academy. So if anything, that would have influenced TSM to think maybe we should give him a chance. Because when we talk to Mark and we watch academy, no one thought Grig was that impressive in academy. So that's why it was kind of surprising that they were putting him for Mike Young. But I think the solo queue, personally, having no insight into the decision, I think that it would have been important, because it's the public latches onto it. And I know that the players on the team kind of by diffusion are also influenced by the public's perception. When they read that, oh, this guy's pretty good, they think, oh, maybe I'll give him a chance. And when I watch Bjerg interact with Grig, I feel like there is more comfort there for that team. I feel like Grig is more comfortable playing in that environment, and I think they're more comfortable with that dynamic. The whole thing about bringing in Mike Young to be this aggressive jungler who's going to be able to shot call when he has 4 years of less of competitive experience than everyone else on the team has never really made sense to me. But Grig coming in and deferring to all of the veterans while still being solid, that's just the dynamic that I feel like if Mike wants to succeed, he needs to have as his dynamic. I don't think Mike's ever going to come in as the leader of that team and have them succeed.
Unless you come in with so much swagger and you're smashing from the very beginning and people start to buy into it. Like when the confidence falters, especially for like a person who is supposed to be super aggressive and a carry player and everything, it starts to really, people lose faith in you playing that. And Greg, I mean, you can say like maybe he didn't look amazing in academy, but he's also mostly just been a tank player. And tanks, I generally feel like a tank jungler is mostly like a force multiplier. It's one of those situations where obviously you can, excel and take over games at times, but like, someone who's playing a Sejuani and a Zac and all these sorts of things. And if you look at a solo queue, all his most played is mostly tanks. He obviously does play other things as well, but like when you put better pieces around you, if you're doing all the right things, getting vision and protecting them and whatever, and counter ganking and doing all these sorts of things, they get much bigger advantages with that, right? Like when your mid laner is Bjergsen and your top laner is Haunter, maybe all you have to do is ward for them and then they win their lanes, right? And I think he had a pretty successful week, and I'm just expecting TSM to be sticking with him and looking to see if they can continue to improve. But I mean, their first week they went 2-0, but it's not like they looked super dominant. They were
super close to losing to CLG.
They were super close to losing to CLG. And both games, they played standard, which I think is totally fine, but they played extremely slow, which is something that at least internationally has always kind of plagued them when you think about some of the issues that they've had. It felt like they were playing very, very slow.
The FlyQuest game was fast, but the CLG game was slow.
Yeah, the CLG game mostly.
And then the CLG one, they did make a couple of early mistakes, which would contribute to them playing slow, They actually were the ones who started the first move on the top lane. When Bjergsen went up there, and that backfired. And so after that backfired, it did make sense for them to kind of like wait for the opportunity. But it's super hard to balance those because, like you're saying, the lack of proactivity has been something that you're always very ready to jump on this team for.
Yeah, because if you feel like, oh, there's so many openings that CLG could have won this game, and that's kind of how I felt. Like they felt like they were in the driver's seat. Well, if you're playing against a better team or they execute a little bit better, well, you just lose, and then all of a sudden there's more questions. But still, this is the debut basically for Grig on TSM.
It's a good start.
They went 2-0. It's a great start, and if they can keep that up and build from there, it's going to be looking good.
It's much better than the Mike Young, Shyvana getting Rise ulted into Baron Pit debut. Let me say that.
I also like, because we did like a mic check to listen to the comms for TSM when they were about to win, and the team's kind of like trolling around the fountain or whatever. And Greg's like, please guys, just end. I don't get to win an LCS that often. And you could hear it in his voice. And like, he really means it. And you're like, you start to feel for him and you're like, you know what? I associate with this jungler mentality where
please, team.
Yeah, please, like
please, sir, can I have a win?
I'm new here. Like, let's get it done. It's like that solo queue where you're like super worried about your team
promos
like,
or something.
We made it all the way to the Nexus, guys. All right, just end it. I've been traumatized by all my teams throwing.
Yeah. Final two teams I want to talk about are Team Liquid and 100 Thieves. The NA LCS Finals rematch was actually the only match that either of these teams won last week when TL took down 100 Thieves. TL then lost to Golden Guardians in about 20 minutes, and 100 Thieves never killed the Nexus. So what do you take from an overreaction standpoint about Team Liquid's loss to Golden Guardians or 100 Thieves' inability to find a win?
My overreaction is that both these teams suck at playing non-marksmen. And it's one of those things where it's, that's not fully fair to say. Of course, it is no reaction because it is just, small sample size. But the mistakes that we saw, not just Cody Sun and Doublelift make, but also Wild Turtle and all these sorts of things where it was like the Cody Sun was pretty egregious. He's playing Vladimir into Zyra Khan, not counting minions, seeing that they're going to get level 2. Then they get level 2. Then he gets, he doesn't flash any of the CC, just dies level 1, gives up that kill. And then even the TL one wasn't as bad, but both Doublelift and Olay have Targon's charges. They're 1 minion from level 2 when they get dove. And Golden Guardians does execute a very nice dive. It's 3 level 2s against 2 level 1s. But if you level up, you take pool on Vladimir, Pobelter's roaming down. Maybe that's a triple kill for Aurelia and you win that game, right? Like these are just mistakes that you don't expect to see them make. Even the Turtle one trying to walk into lane when the other team already has push and you're Swain trying to walk through the river, through them and just dying level 1. Like these sorts of things should not happen at pro level. And that to me has really been like, I think you put it really well, Kobe, when we were talking about this and you're saying they're so focused on thinking, what do I do right on the champion, that they're forgetting like about the basics of the lane, of what do I do in lane, where, you put Doublelift on a Lucian or a Caitlyn or whatever. He doesn't even have to think, what do I do on this champion? Because he's played it 20,000 times.
Right. You can think about what your opponents are going to do, and then you get to think a step ahead and counter kind of what they're trying to do.
Exactly. But they kind of failed to do that. And that is my overreaction that, hey, like TL looks so massively different on like with Doublelift on Xayah and standard marksman playing around that than they did on Vladimir, is that you should just stick to what you know.
I would say that Team Liquid was very inconsistent in the first week. A lot of that does have to do with Doubleless Vladimir, but I think a lot of it also has to do with their bottom lane dynamic and the general inconsistency that they also showed in the spring split. This is a team that in spring was super inconsistent, went on a hot streak during the playoffs, and then again was inconsistent at MSI. So I'm not that surprised that they lost to Golden Guardians in the way that they did. I wouldn't have predicted it, but I'm not surprised about it. And I want to see if they can actually find a level of consistency, because I expect the team to remain a bit of a toss-up every single game they go in, based on if they were able to get a composition that they're comfortable with and gel on versus if they're not, because those are completely different versions of TL when you see impact on the right champion versus not.
Yeah, it's actually so interesting that just off the top of your head, instant reactions, people would be like, oh yeah, Echo Fox, they're so volatile. And we were last split also. But why are Team Liquid getting a free pass on, not being this so volatile team? Like you're saying, why do you just get to brush off these losses where they lost to Golden Guardians last split too? And Golden Guardians looked very good this split. This should not take away, from the improvements that we see from this team. But Team Liquid and Echo Fox are not number 1 and number 2 from spring, but considered in Miami, especially from all the teams, scrimming and everything like that. They're like, okay, these two teams, they're way better than everyone else. They're crushing everyone else in scrims, and they did, win both of their matches. Our two most successful teams, are the two super volatile ones where you're like, there's no consistency, all this stuff can happen, and a lot of it, does come down to the intricacies there on the internal situation.
Yeah, they were like, Echo Fox and TL were two sides of patch notes in a lot of ways, right? TL looked garbage when it was all funneling through top lane, and then Echo Fox looked garbage when it was all funneling through bot lane. And that was, in my opinion, the biggest difference between those two teams last split. 100 Thieves, though, is a team that failed to find a win. My opinion on these guys is, if we're giving overreactions, that it is a little scary how similar this team could be to CLG after CLG found success with Aphromoo. Because Aphromoo exudes so much confidence and can be such a good leader in all of these close games that they played in the spring, where they almost never had a huge gold lead, but they still managed to get first in the regular season. And they had a super close best of 5 against Clutch, and they make finals. And then everyone on that team kind of gets this idea that, yeah, man, we're the second best team in the league. Next step, first best team in the league. But potentially, because they're so good at scraping by these really close games, like CLG was a lot with Aphromoo, that they're not fixing or identifying the reason that so many of those games are close. So all it takes is the team to drop down just a little bit, where the moxie and the shot calling and the leadership and all the veterans they have on that team aren't enough to find wins. And I worry that could be the case for 100 Thieves.
And I also worry about the fact that most, if not all, of their success last split came through a very one-dimensional style. It was playing through Cody Sun. Cody Sun did an enormous, percentage of their damage in the games. It was almost always protect the Cody, succeed late game. Can you still do that style if you want to try to run these, these new meta bot lanes, or do they have to figure something else out? So, they need to show us some different strategies, I think, coming from that. And another thing that I think a lot of people kind of have been talking about, and maybe it's too early to talk about, but is Levi going to play? Like, do they sub him up? He's been getting, you guys were talking about solo queue earlier, and all I was thinking about is Levi and how many people I've seen asking, who's my Krabs? Like, who's this guy he's ranked 2 with a 70% almost win rate, 69% win rate now. He's 1140 LP.
Import slots really make the difference there.
They do, for sure. But it's just one of those situations where it's another guy who has had, he has had international success. He's having tremendous solo queue success. You would have to obviously move around the roster and do these sorts of things, but there's a lot of talk about that. Even when 100 Thieves was doing well, as what will happen with Levi. And so if they're starting to do poorly, I saw so much talk about on social media and on Reddit and all these things about, when is Levi going to get his shot? Like, his solo queue stats are pretty insane.
Dude, sub mid lane.
For 100 Thieves, though, I mean, they ran a standard marksman bottom. Like they did Lucian Rakan for the second game versus CLG. And that was the one, CLG had a really good game where they were able to rotate.
But it's also not really the same style as how they were playing before. It was so much like late game scaling, 80 carries, play for protect the Cody on like Tristana and so on and so forth. Like all these crit marksmen that was about getting to later stage. Lucian obviously like is a marksman, but it's a different style. And then, you know, the Vladimir game was kind of a tragedy because of the laning phase and that kind of spiraled off of that. But it's just to me, like it's not that they can't, they haven't run any of it. It's just I want to see how them succeed on multiple strategies and succeed through top lane, succeed through jungle, and do these different things. Because if you are only able to succeed on like scaling 80 carries, or that is by far your best strategy, then teams can target that, I think, even more easily in this meta where they're weaker.
Jat's reasoning, I remember, for putting 100 Thieves high, or was it like predicting?
It was the
them in one of
leadership
them?
of Aphromu when everything is crazy that they'll be able to find order in the chaos. That was not the case in the first 2 games, Kobe, but it could be later.
Could
Got
be.
a lot of games left.
Who else are we hitting? Oh, we're gonna go Twitter.
Yeah, you're in charge of Twitter today.
All right.
We decided Kobe was like, you know what? I want Twitter questions. He sent out a tweet asking for Twitter questions. That
He
means
did a great job.
That means the Kobe's in
At
charge
no
of Twitter.
point did I say, you know what? I want Twitter.
He was begging for it.
Yeah,
I
he
specifically
loves
remember he said, "Please, guys,
First
let me give you
question.
Twitter questions."
First question was actually from Avali, and she asked, "When's the next bet?" Because
Favoritism.
we did a couple bets early on, and then Euphoria, those guys decided to steal our idea
Yeah.
and do it every single show.
No one has ever done bets before, by the way. We were the first people to ever do bets.
Completely
We invented
original.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
We should monetize it.
When
that's a good idea.
when's the next one though? You feel it? Let's see. I lost the most recent one. I beat
you were
that
a
and then I
beautiful
lost
maid.
to Zale. I think that's the chain.
I mean, the next bet.
Now
is
the
when we
power's
have a
in
good-
your hand.
Next bet is when we have something good to bet on.
Yeah. It needs to be something that is interesting that we disagree on.
Exactly, and that's close enough that it's actually worth betting on. So
I'm down if people send us ideas because sometimes
maybe we could get a Rift Rivals bet going with some of those Euphoria clowns. We could maybe bet on the results of Rift Rivals.
Actually, that's going to be the next
So
bet.
that's my challenge to those Euphoria fools. You guys can tweet at them and let them know.
Yeah, because NA is going to win Rift Rivals.
It's going to be free. So we could maybe do a group bet. By our powers combined,
I think so.
we could do a group terrible cosplay, or they could have to do a group terrible cosplay.
I'm down.
Or something else.
All right.
I mean, it's really no risk.
Are we down here?
Yeah,
Are
there's
we?
no risk to this bet. I'm down.
All right. Well, there you go. That's the official bet. That's you guys have been challenged to Euphoria. So NA gonna smash you at Rift Rivals for free. If they don't, we have to dress up in something
We'll
stupid.
figure out the details.
I mean, we could
but that'll be the next bet.
figure out what
There
to
you
bet
go.
later as well. We got another one. This one's from Michael Buck at Sketch2622 with the buff to Stormrazor and the buffs to the champ directly. Azale, is there any chance that we see Kindred in pro play?
Yes.
Because I have run into some of the pro players in solo queue playing Kindred.
Yes, I would say
junglers.
yes for sure. Kindred, my favorite champ. I know people. I have the most master points on that champion, and I think it's actually good again.
Would you even build Stormrazor on
I
the champion?
don't know
That's
about
my
that.
follow-up
I
because this is a
probably not.
two-part question.
Probably not building Stormrazor. I
Yeah.
think
For me, Bork is so good
Yeah.
right now because it got 200 gold cheaper.
Exactly.
I really like rushing the item.
yeah, I mean, I still think that you're probably just going to want to go jungle item Bork, and then usually third item. Like I still think Hurricane is incredibly good, or sometimes you need to go defensive like a Mar or a QSS or whatever. Maybe people could go with Stormrazor. Like I could still see it maybe, but I just think in general, like there's already really fantastic items that have been kind of improved. Like you said, Bork is a lot cheaper, but I do think there's definitely room for Kindred with some of the buffs coming in and some of the systemic changes that have kind of been accounted for now because you got a lot worse, or they got a lot worse with the scuttle changes and whatnot. So I actually think Kindred could be coming in, and I'm pretty excited about that. I especially think that it can be pretty successful sometimes against some of these dive comps, like when you're seeing things like we've actually been seeing a fair bit of Nocturne, and I think that Kindred can shut down Nocturne pretty heavily in team fighting.
Yeah, I like what the theory of Kindred being popular could do for a lot of different strategies because there's so many unique things about the champion.
Mm-hmm.
The ultimate, like you're talking about, provides a completely different dynamic to team fights. Then also with her buffs, she's actually very strong in contesting the early crabs now. Just grab a red buff and go try and control both of them. So there are a lot of different things you can do early on as well as late. And even if we start to see more marksmen back in the bottom lane after Banner removed and some of these Infinity Edge buffs and stuff like that, if you have a marksman in the jungle, then that can be your source of ranged attack damage, and we could still see the prevalence of some different bottom lanes. I personally really like the bottom lanes that pack 2 stuns, like double wizard bottom lanes that have 2 different stuns to be able to just use base values of spells early on to get kills on lanes like that. I really want to see some more effectively used lanes like that are kill lanes, but they aren't as risky as like the double melee or whatever that have to go all in for the kills.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree. Next question.
You a big Kindred player?
I just think they fit in a lot of team competitions. Ooh.
And there's lots of cool combos you can do, like Kindred plus Janna knocking people out of the ult, Kindred plus Galio, the Galio ult in as the ultimate is expiring, Gragas. There's lots of cool combos you can do.
Kobe, don't let us down on these Twitter questions. Gotta have the next one.
I'll just read a random one then.
Really?
Yeah. Well, because we used up all the ones in the document.
All right, this is the last one.
Do you think some of the lower teams will be able to find, hold on, I'll read it afterwards because I just scrolled down, will be able to find success through innovation in the current meta? Or will the relative skill of the team still push them out of the top spots? That was Adam Friedman, at Adam L. Friedman.
Sweet. That's basically a question of, will the meta make some teams that have like a skill win?
To me, basically what he's saying is because there are so many options in the meta right now, does that increase the possibility of success for some of the teams that are ranked lower in the standings, where you consider if they go standard matchups of what they're used to playing, man for man or whatever, they would lose down the rosters. Now he's saying, there's more opportunities to change up strategy. Do you think we're going to see that happen?
Right. And sometimes it depends on the person, but sometimes this can be misinterpreted of, it's not standard, therefore the team's skill doesn't matter, right? And that's how we get into those whole like cheese discussions, because a lot of times you'll think, double melee, double wizard, double tank, that's cheese. It's all a skill test. Everything when these patches change is still a skill of how good you are. And I do think that there are teams that would win in standard if they're not good in the other skill tests, are very vulnerable to the people who have been able to master either double wizard or double tank or bruiser down bottom lane. So that'll be my answer to that question, is if you're not good at those other things, you're going to be punished.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of part of my thought of why I thought FlyQuest could maybe rise up a bit was because, hey, Turtle is really good at this other style, right? So that is a team that is considered in a bottom tier or a very low tier that maybe can kind of rise up because of the flexibility of their players. So if you have that flexibility, hey, I think it could bump you up a couple notches.
All right.
Any thoughts, Kobe?
I mean, I definitely think that it increases the probability just because there, more options are seeing play and more people are not prepared to play these different styles. It totally increases the opportunity for teams that have traditionally been on the bottom of the standing.
Yeah, I randomly ran into Kiwi Kid at the park the other day, and I had a discussion about because he was a role swap player, right? Who liked playing a lot of weird stuff, and with how many champions we have in the game now, and how deep so many of especially the new kits are, like how many games it takes to actually master it, I really do feel like it is probably impossible to be a jack of all trades. Back when there were 50 or 60 champions, like the very beginning of pro play, I think it was actually achievable with how many hours there are in the day to like keep up with the patches and play at a challenger level in like 5 different roles.
What about Faker? We got to go to the extremes.
I know. We're going to the extreme.
In pro play, he has won with melee champions, Olaf, Aurelia, Master Yi.
But has he won with Tarek mid?
No. And that's only in the mid lane. Like, I do think there are some people that are going to be better at it. I think there are people that can be proficient at it. But I just feel like that with so many champions in the game and how many games it takes to become master level at a champion, there is not enough hours in the day, especially when you don't even know you're going to need to prepare this stuff until a week and a half before your match, where suddenly you're going to have to be, proficient at 40 bot lane champions? I think that's actually impossible. So that was just a thought that I had.
Do you, this is just a follow-up from at Riot Kobe, and he said,
okay,
he asked,
you're going to to me right after this?
Yeah, he said,
genuine.
He's going to ask you, do you enjoy watching, and do you think it's more fun to test this skill of you can be super versatile, play all these different champions? Do you have more fun watching someone, go off on Aurelia one game, go off on Talon another game, go off on, Nocturne another game? Or would you rather see the peak performance of a single champion? Like the best Yasuo plays ever. Best Yasuo I've ever seen in your life.
I would rather,
or a bunch of different
the
stuff.
Diversity, because
At a slightly less level.
A slightly less level, because it's fun to see new stuff. Like, so in the one-off game, it's more exciting to see the best possible Yasuo ever.
And you can learn more.
But yeah. But in pro play, if that person has absolutely mastered one champion versus a number, then you don't get to see the Yasuo again, because that just gets banned every game. And B, the 15th or 20th Yasuo game at that level becomes less exciting compared to, like watching all these different things. Like, I love the variety, and I think that, like matchups are so big in this game that being the absolute perfect Yasuo is in many games worse than being the like 90% Riven or the 90% Aurelia or whatever, and that's why I think I'd prefer that.
Yeah, I think it's all about thresholds. I would rather have the 100% Yasuo versus the 65% brand, right? But I think in a perfect world, I don't know where my threshold is going to be. I'll take the 90% on 50 different champions than 100% on one. It's all about overall peak performance. And what is peak performance in League of Legends? It's killing the Nexus.
Yeah.
However you do that, I want to see
the argument starts to get a little weird.
It's a little circular,
when you lump it into, they're just going to ban out or whatever. But yeah, I like the idea.
Good question, Rykobi. You should send in more Twitter questions.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for this episode of The Dive. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to check us out next Wednesday when we return on YouTube and all of our podcast platforms. I think SoundCloud is one of our biggest ones, but iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket.
Still waiting on that Spotify.
Yeah, we need to have like
the bodyguards haven't let us in yet.
I keep getting like texts on my phone to be like, support net neutrality, call your blah, blah, blah. Support Spotify. Call them and tell them you want the dive.
Or support the dive on Spotify.
Yeah. That's what I'm going to do. Anyway.
We'll start protesting.
Sure. Hashtag the dive law if you want to send us tweets as well. That's how Kobe found them. We'll see you next Saturday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time for NA LCS Countdown, followed by Counter Logic Gaming versus Team Liquid. See you then.